Okay, guys, thanks for joining us tonight. Welcome to the Microsoft Cloud Security User Group, the March 22 meetup. Tonight we've got Kevin Evans, who's going to be starting the presentations for us tonight. Got a quick slideshow that I'll run through, and then we'll pass over to Kevin. So, without further ado. Okay, so today on our social media platform, we launched a social media competition with a like, reshare, or tweet. So that you can see that on our social media platforms. So if you're following us on our Twitter at MSCSUG, and also via our LinkedIn page, the Microsoft Cloud Security User Group, you get one entry for both platforms, and all names will be going into a draw. Tomorrow I will record that, and then we will announce the winner tomorrow evening around 7 p.m. Put that out over the social media platforms. Okay, so I just want to read through our code of conduct. This user group is a fun, safe place for all to learn and grow within the area of Microsoft Cloud Security. We actively encourage an inclusive and diverse community. We are a diverse tech community where all are individuals with differences, but we are all members and we are all here to learn from each other. We expect every member of this group to respect each other, whether they are attending or presenting at our group. I think that's just more a bit of life common senses. Okay, Charlie.
Hi everyone, I'm having a few technical issues today. So I'm Charlie Goff. I'm obviously one of the co-founders of the Microsoft Cloud Security User Group, based in the southwest of the UK, in Taunton, so between Bristol and Exeter. I work as a senior cloud security architect for a company called Open Systems, which is based out of Zurich in Switzerland, and kind of mainly really have real interest in getting other people involved in security. So it's great to have the likes of Kevin on today to talk through various bits. I'm really looking forward to his talk. So you can follow me on LinkedIn, Charlie Goff, or via Twitter, Get Off Me Land, which is very Somerset based. Over to Chris.
Yeah, I'm Chris Wright. So I currently work for HTG, who are a Microsoft partner, based in the northeast, just outside Newcastle. As you can tell, I'm not from Newcastle or from that area. I'm from Liverpool. And you can find me on LinkedIn, Christopher Wright, and Twitter at Chris W Azure. So yeah, I'm one of the organisers along with Charlie. We want to try and grow this community, but it's not just about us. This is a community, and this is what we want. So everybody is welcome to, speak up, ask questions, and we want this to feel like a community, rather than just me and Charlie hosting and having talks, various speakers. Okay, so we have just become a partner with Azure Live. This is going to be an event that's going to be running all day on the 21st of April. So you can sign up. I will share the link to the sign up page via the chat, and there is also an opportunity for a prize to be won. I will gather the information for you from the emails shortly, but I will send the link out there. It's going to be an all-day event, and it's running from midday GMT to 9 o'clock at night GMT. Okay, so tonight we've got Kevin Evans, who's looking at securing your cloud environment. And then just after Kevin, we've got Derek Smith, who's joining us to modernize your SOC with Microsoft Sentinel. Afterwards, we'll have a quiz, and then we'll have a close and any feedback. I know last month we stuck around a little bit, stopped the recording, and just had a little bit of a networking chat and discussion. Okay, so Kevin, I'd like to hand over to yourself.
Cool. Is Derek here already, or is he chiming in later on?
I think he'll be popping by later on.
Right, okay. I know Derek, so when he rocks up. Right, okay, cool. Okay. This is great because it's in Teams. So normally I have to share to Zoom and it's all broken and everything. So hopefully, when I press this button, he says. Right, can we see that?
Yeah, you can see that.
It's disappeared off my screen, so just bear with me a second. I've jinxed it, saying, "Oh yeah, it's going to work." Is it just sharing the window?
Yeah, I can see the cloud cybersecurity recommendations.
Sharing your slides. There we go. That's a bit better. What it is, I've got a large screen, so normally when it renders, right, it's like the size of a pea on other people's screens, right, because of the resolution I'm using. But it's okay. So tonight's talk, is basically I was trying to think of a name. This is a bit fluffy, I know, but it's more about, we're going to be talking more of a strategy level of securing your Microsoft cloud environment, right? Or a cloud environment. So I've tried to come up with some principles, some high level topics to sort of go through that will strengthen your posture, right? So let's go on to the next slide. So a quick introduction about me. My name's Kevin Evans. I currently work at Microsoft here in the UK. I work in the customer success unit. And I specialize, I'm an Azure customer engineer, so I specialize in customer engineering. Typically in Azure infrastructure, but I also do cloud native topics as well. And obviously, I also specialize in well-architected framework and the security pillar. I also have a focus on enterprise scale, infrastructure as a code, and the cloud adoption framework. You can follow me on Twitter at the Kevin Evans. So yeah, that's me. So what I wanted to do was talk about, as we know, right, currently at the moment as well, security, everyone always says is a hot topic, but it's just business as usual, especially at the moment as well with the current situation that's going on, obviously, in Ukraine, right, with the Russians invading there. But what people don't tend to know is that Russia actually started cyber attacks on Ukraine a month before the actual land invasion. And they started to basically attack their infrastructure, their power plants, right? I don't know if people remember, but they did hack one of their nuclear power plants about 10 years ago. And they caused disruption there. They also tried to take out the communications, and they're also trying to spread disinformation. So, as we're probably well aware, right, Russia has come under a lot of international pressure to withdraw from Ukraine, and there's sanctions being applied to them. And again, I know from a company point of view, Microsoft has also thwarted a lot of these attacks, right, that have happened from Russia. And these are state-sponsored attacks, right? And these could be from military units, or units within the FSB, so they're stateside sponsored, right? Or actually, they'd be coming from allies of Russia, right? So, we've got units running out of Belarus, etc., that have been attacking. Now, at the end of this situation, it's fair to say that Russia is going to retaliate, right? So they're going to target our infrastructure, our services, right? Hospitals, train stations, that kind of thing. These are the kind of things that they want to do, is put pressure on individual countries, right? That will put pressure on them. You've probably seen that Anonymous declared war on Russia as well. And they did loads of embarrassing things, right? They took out, they started superimposing images on the news feed, and they reprogram the train ticket machines to say favorable things about Vladimir Putin, right? So, I mean, I'm not going to repeat what they've said, right? But have a Google, it's quite humorous. But again, Russia's not going to stand by, right? At the end of this conflict, they're going to start coming after the West at some point. So what I've tried to do is I've tried to put some bits and pieces together to help you strengthen your environment. So next slide. So what can we do, right? So we've all got cloud instances, yeah? Be that Azure, be that AWS, be that GCP, right? This has obviously got a bit of a focus on the Microsoft Cloud, Azure. But here's a few things that we could particularly look at, right, to sort of strengthen our environment and our posture. So you'd think this would be being done everywhere because it's being done mostly in the domestic markets, but enabling multi-factor authentication. So using a modern identity platform, right? So a lot of use cases, right? Companies that are using a hybrid identity solution. So they're either synchronizing from on-prem and obviously syncing their user groups and users up to the cloud and using Azure AD hopefully. So Azure AD should be the mainstream, right? I know it's a bit of a. I've either said to you 5 years ago, oh yeah, you need to start using Azure AD, right, as your primary identity platform, right? If you're a Microsoft focused customer, you'd have been like, really, Kev? I mean, it's still in its infancy. I mean, look at the technologies it's using. I haven't even got anything like deployed or written for it, right? That could utilize Azure AD. But now, as the time has gone by, right, and the scales are starting to tip, there's more features in Azure AD than there will be in Windows AD, right? And we're also, introducing extensions, right, like ADDS, right, for legacy authentication, just in case you need Kerberos, right, in Azure for IaaS workloads. So enabling multi-factor authentication is definitely, it should be the top of your list, right? So it means I've got either a device in my hand or I'm getting phone called, yeah, or there's a couple of different ways to get notified, but this should be, enabled. Now, I think it starts screaming, right, on the Azure Security Center that global admins should have MFA, right? Or, people with elevated accounts, but we're talking like all users should have MFA. Like my 9-year-old son has MFA enabled on his Xbox. That's just standard, right? That was his email account, yeah? It's just sort of got it as standard, right? If you use Google email, right, or Gmail, MFA is pushed on you. Do you want to set up a secondary device? So you should be doing this inside your corporate network as well, right? In your corporate environment. Yeah, we're going to stick with the user case model here, but applying least privilege access and securing your most sensitive and privileged credentials. Again, start thinking, who needs access to what? Why do they need access to it? Should be questioning this stuff, right? Looking for sleeper accounts. I mean, I've seen situations where, all right, Carl, I've seen situations where users have had global admin for 6 months, right? And I'm not even logged in, right, to the portal for the for Office 365, right? So office.portal.com or the Azure portal, right, to do administration tasks. So start using some of the utilities that are built into Azure AD, right? So access reviews and that kind of thing. Question why people should have that access. Why do you need global admin? Well, I like to create resources, or I like to do this. Well, what kind of resources do you need access? You're trying to create. Maybe they could do with a contributor account, right? Or or some sort of custom RBAC role, right? Start fine tuning your environment. I think the worst case I ever saw was 120 global admins in an organization, right? I think officially, unofficially, depending on the size of your organization, could be 2 to 6. Right, plus a break glass account, yeah, and the break glass account should be, protected with something that's non-MFA, by the way. So using a FIDO, FIDO MFA key or something like that you lock in a safe. So, review all authentication activity for remote infrastructure. How are people getting in, right? People traditionally think that the boundary of your environment is your network, right? They think the edge boundary is, the firewall, right? Well, yeah, it is to a point, but actually it's identity that's the edge boundary. So if we can secure users at the identity level and they're trying to authenticate, trying to get in, right? We've got our MFA, right? Or we've got PIM, so privileged identity management. Yeah, and we've got our access reviews, or we've got conditional access set up, right? We're already testing where this user's coming from, right? We're already starting to figure out, are they trustworthy? Do they meet the criteria, etc.? Are they a risky sign-in? Yeah. For example, I could be happily logging in, right, from England, yeah, in the United Kingdom, and then all of a sudden start logging in from China. I mean, within the space of 5 minutes, that's a risky sign-in. Right. So what we want is we want to be able to trip the flares, right, and illuminate the situation. We want the right people to be emailed. We want that to be investigated. So doubled up with, I don't know how many of you have had it, but I've had it a few times. But all of a sudden you'll be on, you'll be watching TV or something like that, and your phone just starts lighting up, right? Someone's trying to get into your account, but because you've got MFA, it's trying to probe the MFA route, and obviously you go, oh, hang on a minute, something's not right here. Someone's trying to get into my account because I'm not logging in, right? So, you can investigate it that way as well. Should go without saying, right? But this still happens. Secure and manage systems with up-to-date patching. Now, there's tools built into Azure, right, to help you with this, especially with Update Manager. And also, it's never been easier than before, right, to patch operating systems, especially with the tool set. Also, try and use the Azure native tools when you're patching. We obviously, we support Windows virtual machines and Linux virtual machines, etc. And you can set up patch cycles, but make sure you get those systems patched. Also, remember to patch the applications as well. If you're using SQL, right, on IaaS, or you've got IIS on an IaaS box, right, you should be trying to use a web app at that point, which is a PaaS offering. But, keep those applications patched. Keep your dependencies patched. If you're writing an application, right, and it's got dependencies, you should have a dependency map to make sure that your developers are keeping on top of all the runtimes that need to be kept up to date. So if they're using Java, etc. Isolate legacy systems. So obviously we have a bit of a life cycle going on, right, of workloads that are being deployed. We'll have stuff that's cutting edge that could be run on containers. We could have some stuff that's running on PaaS, and then we could have some stuff that's like a hybrid, like a managed instance at the back end supplying the data for it, right? And then we could also have, IaaS running, right, with a migrated workload. So it could have Server 2008 on it, or the new Server 2008 is Server 2012, right, which is coming up to end of support, right? So I've got these legacy workloads. I need to group them together, right, and isolate them. So if someone's able to get in, on one of those legacy workloads, and they're able to, execute a vulnerability, etc., they can't, laterally navigate across the environment, right, to escalate themselves up. So yeah, isolating legacy workloads is a big importance. Validate your backups. I mean, a lot of people back up, right? But do you test your backups? It's again the same with your your DR scenarios, right? And failing over, etc. Does it work at a time of crisis? That's not when you want to be testing, right? Your backups and your DR process. You want to be doing this. Exactly, Carl. There's no point, right? If everyone's at the pump, right, and the building's burning down and everything, and you're trying to restore your environment to another region, you got to make sure those backups work, right? And you got to make sure that they're consistent and protected. Make sure that you've got certain controls in place on your backups as well. If a particular workload becomes compromised, right, you've got to restore it. You want that backup to be protected from the previous day, right? So you can make the right restoration, and then obviously patch the vulnerability off the back of it. So, good drills are a must. Yeah, we're just going to stick with the plans here, but verify your cyber incident response plan and make sure it's up to date. At the end of the day, people don't really think about this, right? They may think about DR, right, and business continuity, right, and they may have a plan around that. Like during the pandemic, can't come into the office, so what does everyone do? Well, actually, it was a big surprise for everyone, right? It was like work from home. Some people didn't even have laptops, right? So that triggered, that kind of motion of, well, we need to get people laptops. We need to get them on Teams. We need to make them work like this, right? So business continued to function, right? So what happened? Your cyber incident response is something that many people might not think of because, like, well, we haven't been hacked or compromised before. Okay, well, you need to get a drill instruction set, right? Say, if we do get compromised, what do we do? How do we isolate the rot? How do we stop the rot? Do we have to pull in a partner to help us, right? Do we have a SOC that's in place? That kind of thing. So we need all that information ready for when the situations arise. Again, this one shouldn't go without saying, but you wouldn't believe, right? Use anti-malware, right, and workload protection tools. I mean, in Azure, there's a free anti-malware extension. Obviously, there's different grades to that, right? You can get Azure Defender for Cloud, etc., if you want to notch it up a level, and obviously have that enhanced protection. But there's a free anti-malware extension, right, that can be used. Get that deployed via Azure Policy as well, so that your workloads are consistently protected. You want to make sure your management of your systems is taken care of automatically. So if someone does spin up a resource, right, and goes outside the curve, hopefully you should be all deploying your resources as infrastructure as a code. But if you're not, and someone deploys something in the portal, that Azure Policy is then going to kick in, right? Apply the right management tools on that VM, or that resource, and then apply, the anti-malware extension as well. It also means that you can configure stuff like, where the log analytics agent's being pointed, the VM's feeding into the right log analytics agent, etc. So make sure that you've got the right tools and the right Azure policies enabled, etc. I'm just going to bring back to the protection tools as well. So obviously in Azure, right, we encrypt everything at rest, but volumes on IaaS servers are optionally encrypted. All right. So the data is encrypted, the data center level, but you should also use BitLocker to encrypt those volumes, and obviously use Azure Key Vault to protect them. Right. So you belt and braces encryption on your IaaS workloads. Again, it should be the same for if anything's being consumed and it's HTTP, you need to get rid of that. You need HTTPS enabled, right, and get that up and running. You want everything secured with a certificate, and you want to be trying to use the highest cipher strengths that you can possibly get, right, for things to be consumed. And then zero trust network, and this is quite a big topic, right? So a lot of customers will have a user case where, well, we've got an on-premise environment, we've got our data center, we've either got a VPN or an express route, right, speaking to our Azure cloud, right? And for some reason, right, customer will think, I trust my on-premise. Nothing bad's going to happen there. So the link between my cloud and my on-prem is completely open, right? When we know what it is because we built it, it's not the right attitude to have. If something got compromised on-prem or something that got compromised in your Azure public cloud, what you don't want is it going back and affecting the other data center instance, right? So what you need is obviously the right routing in place. You also want to have secure routing in place. So what kind of technologies can communicate over that, right? You want to try and encrypt that link as well. And also you want a firewall at either end. You want to inspect the traffic, right? So using something like Azure Firewall in your Azure instance, right, can really help you out. Also, when we speak about networking and topology, we're either going to go for a hub and spoke or we're going to use Azure vWAN. Now, most traditionally, people use hub and spoke. Again, should be a firewall on that hub, right? So traffic can be inspected. And we also want to, again, if we've got our hub VNet, yeah, and we've got a spoke that's coming off it, doesn't mean we trust it. All right, just because you're my neighbor doesn't mean I trust you, right? So we want NSGs on that subnet, yeah, to protect it, right? So we're protecting our east and west traffic, and we're controlling the protocols that are going through that way, right? It's very important to sort of consider that, yeah. Just because you've deployed something in Azure, right, or an application team's deployed something in Azure doesn't mean it's trusted. You don't, it's a bit like, you're going to have your shared services hub, you're going to have your domain controllers there and everything else. You do not want like a nasty actor basically coming in and obviously moving laterally through the network and elevating itself up over different resources. And then, obviously, I don't want to steal Derek's thunder, right? Hopefully he turns up soon. But enable login for key functions. You want everything being logged, right? Either to our log analytics workspace, or you want it being logged to a SIEM, right? Such as Azure Sentinel. Because when you do figure out that the rot's there, right, and you've been attacked, on average, it's 60 days have gone by and they've been inside your environment. So you need as much information as possible, right, to get all the pieces to build the picture. So as much logging that you can get from your identity platform, right, from your workloads, your networking, from your firewalls, everything, right, will build a picture, and you'll be able to use capabilities in your SIEM, right, to understand where it's come from, to plug those gaps, and then go away and remediate the issues that caused it in the first place. Has anyone got any questions on any of these that they want to ask before I move on to the next section? Silence is golden. Right. Okay. So yeah, those. Sorry, go on.
Yeah. Could you give me a source for that 60-day stat? That's an interesting stat I'd like to be able to pass onwards.
Yeah, no worries. I can drop that in.
Thank you.
No worries, Adrian.
I thought traditionally it was a lot longer than that, actually, didn't it?
Yeah, quick. It can be a lot
longer on your network before people discovered them.
I suppose it's economies of scale, right? Some situations, right, it's been there years. But if you've got like a highly maintained environment, just on average, what I'll do is after this I'll try and confirm where it's where I've got that figure from. That's something I've been told repeatedly. What I'm trying to get at is before by the time you know it, right, they're already in. You've got to try and get in there, right, and get them out as quickly as possible. Michael, you got a question?
Hey Kev, how's it going, mate? Are you well?
Not bad, mate, not bad.
No, I was just going to say, everything you're saying here, like, it's amazing how, if you run a simple network scan on your own AD, it's amazing how many holes you're going to find, because there's so many holes there. Like the thing where the people can add 10 machines to a domain, and that's a standard user. So if you're not using stuff like network policy server, they could be in there, they could be scanning your network, they can be looking for domain controllers, and they can be, it's stuff like attacks from the inside, and people don't realize it. And I only found that out, 3-4 years ago. I was going, really, you can do that? But yeah, but I agree with you on the global admins thing. I've seen that as well, where everyone in the company is a domain admin, and they're just
why enterprise admins and domain admins, right?
Because they're sales guys, because they're out on the road and they need to install stuff, and it's more convenience than anything else, really, isn't it? It's that's kind of the way it goes. We don't want to bother them with MFA, and we don't want to bother them, having to ask to install software, sort of thing. So yeah,
that sort of talk upsets me greatly. I'd rather salespeople be upset than be able to do what they want, and not just salespeople, anybody. I back in my 365 days, I'm all Azure these days, but the amount of customers that you used to encounter who their IT staff 10 or 15 staff, the regular day-to-day accounts were also global admins in 365, and you're like,
Wow.
okay, so your global
Yeah.
admin can now send emails and impersonate everybody in your exchange, and you're just, it's just nightmare. It's like, that's the first thing, straight in, everybody's losing their global admins.
Still say it now. I'm doing security assessments for big non-profits, and they've got 5, 6, 7, 8 global admins permanently assigned, and they've got the E5 license.
Yikes.
And you're just like, no.
Yeah, I used to tell people when we were doing security reviews, it was like, you've got to have maximum of 4 global admins, and at least one of those is going to be your break glass account, so you can have 3.
And split it. Break glass. You break glass, you don't give it to one person. Split the password.
Your break glass is I used to set, now the FIDO key thing, Kev, that you mentioned, I want to come back to that in a minute, but I used to set like 128, whatever the maximum.
A really hard password.
128 character password with ridiculous complexity, and then it was stuck in a safe somewhere, and we had alerting tied to it. So if anybody dared log in or attempt to log in with that thing, all sorts of alerts just flew from everywhere. And
so I did.
Carl, I've seen it where they've had the password in the safe and they went to break the glass with it and it didn't work.
Oh, jeez.
And they couldn't get in. Yeah, and they've had
quarter, right?
Yeah, and then the backups didn't work and they had to go back like 3 months or something like that. It's just
So,
it sounds funny. It sounds funny when you're looking in from the outside, but not when you're in there.
Someone was crying, at the other end.
Yeah.
So Kev, see your break glass account stuff. Have you any implementations where you're using the FIDO key for stuff for your MFA? Because a lot of the stuff I was reading back, it's a couple of years back now, we're saying don't attach your break glass accounts to MFA or conditional access at all, because all you need is one of those sub services like multi-factor authentication to go offline, and all of a sudden you don't get access to your break glass account.
So that again, it may have changed, but using a hardware token, right, to create that MFA, because if our MFA service goes down, right, in Microsoft, how are you supposed to log back in, right? So using some sort of hardware token as your MFA, but generally you wouldn't stick a phone number attached to it or an app or anything like that. Like you said, Carl, you stick a mega hard password that's been generated in one of those crazy generators, right, and then you just put that in there and you put it in the safe. So if you can try and use a hardware token that's localized, you try and do that as well to sort of just belts and braces, really.
So, Kev, I went one step further in a couple of customers that I've done.
Let's hear it.
128 character password, split into 64 each to 2 senior managers or leaders within the business in 2 separate roles. If anybody needs to get access to their account, they've got to get those 2 people. And you do 2 accounts and split it across.
It's like nuclear keys, isn't it?
It's like, that's what we're about to say. It's like missile keys, isn't it?
Yeah, it's old school. Old school approach. Can't launch a nuclear weapon with just one press of a button, unless your name's Putin.
Well, here, that's another story and a completely different discussion.
Right, Kevin, I can see that Sumai Adip, is it, got the hand up? You want to ask a question? You want to come off mute? Okay, if not, Banny, have you got a question?
Yeah, it was just obviously I've been listening to the global admins and just sort of like I totally agree with this overprivileged. A lot of people having overprivileged accounts. One thing I've seen in various different organisations, commercially, public sector as well, is don't let your chief exec have a global admin. Why?
It's a red flag. It's a red flag. I've had heated conversations with my leadership teams in the past, right? Especially head of IT, right? Should we use as an example?
Yep.
He's come to me and he's gone, he's not technical. He's gone, I need the domain admin password. And I'm like, but why? Right? And it's like, don't question my authority, but you are, right? And a bit like what Charlie was saying, I had something in the fireproof safe. I had the finance director looking after another part of it, etc. Right? This is back, back before the cloud. This is on premise, and this should be a red flag immediately. It's like, why do you need the access to it? Because you want to keep that attack surface as small as possible, right? You want to be able to count them on one hand, right? At least who's got that kind of high level of access.
And I think it leads itself to things like whaling. If you go and have a look, LinkedIn's the perfect example. Go find your chief technical officers, go find your financial officers. That's what they do, to find out who these people are. And that's where, open source intelligence comes from. And to some extent, maybe that's something that that should be something that's more put into the plans around this. I know this is cyber incident, but around the strategy itself is what's publicly available about our company that people could use against us anyway. There's stuff out there, and also people say about, oh, we don't need that security or what have you, and it gets to the point where, well, it's not important, or sorry, this comes back to the salesman being able to install things. It says, well, okay, that inconvenience, but now you're going to get 10% of your annual global turnover in a fine from a GDPR breach. Does that not look slightly more worrying? Or you're up, or you're up in front of a select committee of, just like P&O Ferries, broadcast to the world, explain your reasoning behind this. So
I've had it where you're right. So you can build a blueprint of an organization via LinkedIn, right? And if we're talking about MFA as well, talking about our GitHub repos, I hopefully there should be a lot of educated people on this call, right, that create private repos for sensitive information, and protect all their secrets using a vault of some sort, but also have an MFA on your repos and having a organizational policy as well on your public repos, because that's the blueprints, right, for your infrastructure, right, and your workloads. But I once worked for an organization, and I quote the CEO or the chairman, I can't remember, he said, "Who's going to hack us?" Right. At that point, I looked for other employment, because I just thought, exactly. Same with the GDPR, right? Obviously, that's changed now. Obviously, post Brexit, right? We've got the ICO and all that are in charge of that. But what you're going to start seeing as time goes by, right? Because obviously, with the government as well, looking for other avenues of funding, that's going to start becoming more aggressive, right? That cycle of, if you had a breach, right, you're going to get fined for that, right? It's going to get more public, and that'll put more pressure on institutes and organizations to start to take notice. It's a shame it has to get to that point, but you'll notice something will come out, right, and they'll be made an example of, right, to sort of,
the ICO now is funded by its fines. Isn't that a driver?
Exactly. It's like the tax man, right? How do I make my revenue? Right, I've got to find someone, and it'll pick on somebody, won't it? Right? Don't make an example of them. So don't let it be you.
They're not picking.
Well, BA were the lucky ones, weren't they?
There are 100 places that have been fined now.
Yeah.
An escalating scale. So first offence, second, whatever, third.
Strike free kind of thing. Yeah.
$500,000 fine next time, that kind of thing. So it's going on, just because it's not in the press, but there's plenty of people being fined, don't you worry.
Well, they've got our data then, rightly so, right? Cool. Got any more questions, Chris?
I can't see any in the chat, just some general chat in there, but no, I can't see any questions.
I've got a couple of slides left, right? So if anyone's got any more questions or any topics of discussion off any of these, raise your hands now. Cool. So put a link in, right, for national government websites, right, especially for our international audiences. These are a great source of here in the UK, we've got something called Cyber Essentials, right, where you can do an assessment, right, for your organization to see where you are, right, and this is outside of, your technical stack, right. Before we even got to your technical stack, this is more about how does my organization protect itself, etc. This is more of an infosec thing, right? But I encourage all of you, right, depending on your jurisdiction or whatever, to go and check out your websites to get more information and framework around securing your business, and these will lead onto your IT systems as well, be that on-prem or in the cloud, right? So I know the National Cybersecurity Center is always drumming out stuff, right? And it'll tell you all the time now at the moment where where the Russians are attacking next, or where you should be looking for stuff, etc. Or they're seeing a lot of malicious traffic coming from XYZ origin. So you could go in there, right, and sort of blacklist that, right, on your conditional access policies if you've got Azure AD, for etc. So yeah, there's obviously for the USA, the Cybersecurity Infrastructure Security Agency. For us, it's the National Cybersecurity Center. And then for Canada, it's the Canadian Centre of Cybersecurity. There's a bit of a common denominator here, right, with the naming. But yeah, again, for the European Union as well, the Agency for Cybersecurity as well. So go and check those sites out, because they can give you some good information, for free of charge as well, which obviously helps. There's always a sweetener, right? So yeah, that's me. So has anyone got any questions or anything else? Anything else you want to sort of ask off topic? Want to hear any horror stories? Anyone got any horror stories?
Love to hear them.
God, can I talk about?
God, love a good story from the trenches.
Yes, yeah.
Flashes on here.
That's what I'm thinking, right? I'm just trying to think one that I can sort of randomize, right, but still gets the message across. I was in a situation once, and oh god, I think I can't remember. There was an implementation going on, right, and this was in my junior days, right, and we recently had a new manager come in, right, and he was the head of IT, and he was reckless, shall we say, right? And he was trying to get something in. There'd been multiple failures, etc., and he was trying to make it work. He was trying to show to the senior leadership team that he was making an impact, etc. And then one Friday night, he went to me. I think it was a Friday night. He goes, "This isn't working. It seems to be the firewall. Can you turn the firewall off?" Right at the edge. And I went, "No," right, and just got in my car and went home. He then engaged a partner and got them to turn the firewall off, and then we got compromised. Right.
Big sign said, "I told you so."
I know. Well, I'm not going to go and you can imagine what happened to this person eventually, right? But what happened was the attacker had already got in and was trying to. Does anyone watch Terminator, where Skynet spread that virus around the world, right? So it gets the military to switch itself on, right? Turn Skynet on, it'll save the day. They were trying to force it down a particular route, right, to deactivate. They were doing a DDoS attack from internally, right, against the firewall. It was stopping the network traffic. So they thought, right, if we turn the firewall off, it'll fix whatever's happening. Yeah. It's mental, right? I was just like,
Sounds like you just took the firewall out completely, because he obviously didn't need it.
Yeah. It was just because things weren't properly configured, etc. I mean, after that, we managed to get a security team in. We got the right partners involved, and we had to basically, remediate the rot and then enhance our edge network. And then it was mandated that we were going to cloud at that point, right? We've all had the conversations, right? Your cloud provider used to come in, and people were skeptical about, how can you manage my data or look after my data better than me? Well, 70 to 80% of the time they can, right? The controls that are already in place on a data center, etc., are going to put you in good standing. Now, that doesn't mean you can get away from the shared responsibility model, right? You're still in charge of securing your workloads, your egress, your ingress traffic, and where that is, right? And how you're being protected from an identity point of view. But yeah, you know, a lot of people's on-premise data centers, and sometimes they're like broom cupboards, yeah, etc. Making the migration to the cloud is going to be, you know, put them in a stronger position.
Yeah, if done rightly.
Yeah, if done rightly. That's the caveat, right?
Kevin, that was absolutely brilliant. Thank you for taking your time up and talking through that. Has anyone got any questions for Kevin before he finishes his presentation?
No, but I would like to say thank you. It was very informative.
Cheers, Adrian.
Thanks, Kevin. I really appreciate your time there. So we've got Derek, who's up next. He's here still.
No, I vanished into the wind. No,
There's Derek. Don't be leaving me out in the ocean by myself like that again.
I would never do such a thing. How long do you think it would take you to swim to the US? A couple days? Week maybe?
I wouldn't get that far, mate, would I? Get to Ireland and stop.
I don't think I'd even get to Ireland, Kev. You could probably just get out to the shoreline.
I'd have a pint waiting for you when you come over. So.
Nice one.
It's worth trying now, isn't it?
We'll roll out to meet you.
I used to work for the RNLI. I wouldn't trust him.
All right.
Derek, do you want to take control?
I am going to take control here. I just got to change the date on something.
I think we've all had one of them days.
Yeah. You look at something, you're like, oh, it's not January, it's actually March. Though honestly, it doesn't even feel like March, it feels like June.
Oh, well, let's say it did feel like June in the UK last week, but now it feels like December, January again.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, I was in the middle of the US earlier this week. So I guess a good case of weather. I landed in a place called Denver, Colorado. It was 82 degrees Fahrenheit on Monday. And by Wednesday afternoon, it was 40 degrees and snowing. So in the span of 36 hours, it went from nice, warm, and pleasant to cold and snow. All right. Well, welcome everybody. My name is Derek Smith. I am I don't work for Microsoft, unlike Kevin, but I do tease him from time to time about working for Microsoft. I'm the director of Cloud Strategic Alliances and Brand at a Microsoft partner, as well as we do various consulting work here in the United States. They're a company called Trace3. I've got my socials there, so feel free to connect with me on either of those. I have a wealth of Microsoft certifications. That's not even all of them. I didn't want to take over the page, so I left those out. But we're going to talk about how ultimately you want to modernize your security operations center, specifically centered around Microsoft Sentinel. Typically, at least from what I see, is a lot of large enterprises, right? You're looking at a multi-point solution perspective. And this is just natural in the enterprise. There's no one platform that's going to solve every challenge that an enterprise has. You're going to deal with multiple different parties in your traditional enterprise. In smaller, more medium-sized businesses, yes, you might get a single platform or two. So it's far less common to have multiple different point solutions there. However, this ultimately does present a fairly complex operational model challenge. Is you now have to find ways to stitch all of these solutions together. They have to have very nice ways to play with each other. It's obviously gotten easier with things like REST API integration and just general awareness amongst third parties that, hey, I should probably integrate with other people. It's going to make my life better. It's going to make my customer's life better. But ultimately, you're relying on your customer to actually turn those on. And so it's a shocking, and I think probably some of you have seen this, how much clients don't do that. And ultimately what we see from at least a traditional SOC perspective is there's a lot of scalability challenges. I don't think it's a secret that there's a wealth of shortage of security professionals in our line of work. So if you're not studying cloud security, you don't have cloud security skills, I'm going to pause right here and tell you, go get them. You're going to see your value probably double, if not triple, pretty quickly, because there is no shortage of people needing trained security professionals, even cloud security professionals, as Kevin highlighted some of the fun, just general challenges a lot of organizations are facing. What we've tried to do in recent years to kind of make up for this deficiency is introduce AI and ML capabilities within various platforms. And this is great. It's helped kind of start bridging that gap. But the problem is a lot of those are proprietary AI ML models, and they don't necessarily scale all that well, right? There'd be a couple of different models here and there, but they may not necessarily address the right use case for the business. They may not address certain things that you're looking for. And so now you need to suddenly have a SOC analyst who now also is a data scientist and can write AI or ML model capabilities. And that's a very rare skill set to find. So that there's a real lack of bridging those two gaps. And then finally, as Kevin touched on earlier, and as we've all seen, there is a not a strong adoption of zero trust taking place. We've all been somewhat preaching from our ivory towers that organizations need to start adopting this methodology. And it's a struggle for a lot of organizations. Zero trust is not easy to implement. And it takes a shift in culture and a shift in mindset. And if anybody's ever had a fun read or a fun talk with Mr. Martin Copeland, he will tell you how much of a struggle it is to do that from a DevOps perspective. Imagine that from a security perspective. So we'll try and help see how we can help that along. So basically today, from a high level, right, we understand that organizations are under a constant IT threat landscape, right? Whether it's from internal or external to the organization. I don't think internal is talked about enough, right? Insider threats are becoming, I think, more and more prevalent in today's world. And, as we look at a SOC, we have to start not only looking out there at, the Russias of the world and the bad actors of the world, but we have to look internally. And it may not be that the internal person necessarily is a bad actor, but they just may do something stupid. Not trying to, to say anything mean about anybody, but our users don't always necessarily know what we know from an IT perspective, and so they just make a blunder, and it can, open up the organization to something serious. So, and the landscape has really evolved, right? We've got on-prem, we've got third-party data centers that we might be hosting stuff in. We've got our cloud providers. We've got a massive mobile workforce, right? 2 years in, and everybody is I think in some form or another a hybrid workforce user. And we've got all these IoT devices. The IoT proliferation is just exploding, and it's only going to get worse. And as the world has now started to slowly move along the IPv6 path and kind of leave IPv4 behind, you're going to see mobile and IoT just, I think, grow at an exponential pace. And so these vectors are simply just becoming too much for a legacy or traditional SOC to handle, right? And then again, that massive skill deficiency within the IT security space, the proliferation of SaaS applications, that huge sprawl, security teams are struggling. They can't really keep up. So how they try to strengthen their position? They typically turn to what we like to refer to as SIEM or SIM tools, right? Security information event management systems, right, to serve that role, to kind of help correlate all of that data, right? But those tools require the right people with the right skills. They've got to have the right integrations, coupled with the right set of processes and methods. The problem is we tried to take a newer technology set and marry it with outdated practices and hoped and prayed that would somewhat address the problem, and it really hasn't. We've seen the scale, the complexity, the rate of change that a lot of enterprise environments that they're going through, especially in the last couple of years, right? That the SIEM solutions are very unwieldy. They've had to scale very quickly, and they're very expensive to run and build. If any of you, I don't know how many Splunk users are out there, but Splunk's not cheap, right? And then couple that with all the infrastructure that you've got to build, it's problematic, right? A lot of data, but human analysts can't look at all of them, right? Alert fatigue, long investigations. I saw somebody post in the chat or about the timeline that Microsoft presents, right, of an attack. It take up to 4 to 6 months, and that can be a huge challenge for a lot of people to take that and identify any potential breaches. And then we've got the long-term endurance. How many organizations, right, are interested in adopting machine learning, AI, right, as part of their security operations? And not many are, because they know they can't really find the analysts at one, and then two, you've got to find this analyst who also has machine learning knowledge, and that's proving to be massively difficult. Training them, maybe you find a security analyst, but then to turn around and train them on how to use machine learning, that's an 8 to 12 month process for a lot of organizations, and they can't wait that long. They need somebody now. They need somebody who's ready to go day one. And so even if you're lucky to even find somebody with that, right, developing those ML models from scratch is a huge hill to climb. So this kind of giving you an example, right, of, and I took a picture of Microsoft Azure Sentinel. It's kind of just the amount of events that you're seeing. So this is the sample snapshot, right? If you look a little bit closely, over the time frame, this is just in a week, over almost 1 million events in 1 week. Can you imagine a human trying to read 1 million events in a week? I'd probably quit my job on day 2, right? So it's just the overwhelming volume that a lot of these security operations centers and SecOp teams who operate them, right? And research has started to show that about 76% of organizations have reported a huge increase in security data, right? So take the shortage of qualified professionals, right? It was about 3.5 million last year, resulted in an increase of security data of 76%, right? So you're looking at roughly almost half of those alerts not even ever getting investigated, right? Just left there, nothing happens, no clue. So we need to get a successful security monitoring and response strategies in place, right, to collect and analyze that data at scale, right? And how do we couple that with machine learning models that can power our solutions today? Oops. I did it the right one. So this is where Microsoft Sentinel comes in. It was purpose built, right, specifically for the situation. Microsoft looked at the market, right, and they kind of recognized a lot of these challenges, right, and how to handle the increase in data that's coming in, right? Cloud is purpose built to handle data ingestion at scale, right? If we can do it for data analytics, if we can do it for massive data lakes and we're churning various analytics, why can we not apply the same thing from a security perspective? And so this idea is that we couple our knowledge of data analytics, put it into a security focus, and then increase our reliance on those AI and ML models, right, to make up that shortage of qualified professionals. And so this SIM as a service was the first solution of its kind to be offered in a public cloud forum to leverage that power and meet the level of demand of ingesting and combining it with additional AI ML service capabilities, not just the native proprietary. And I just realized I spelled fusion wrong. So I am human, I do make spelling mistakes. Not only to help automate from a traditional perspective, but also the ability to bring your own AI and ML models to help automate all of these tasks that you would find a typical SOC analyst to perform in today's environment. Now, if you've all seen the security reference architecture models, Microsoft kind of helps define that Sentinel really is the hub for a modern security operations center. So you have all of the various point solutions, right? Whether it be something like a Fortinet or a Cisco or a Checkpoint or a Palo Alto, right? And then from an on-prem perspective, maybe you've got something like a Java application or VMware or Windows AD or some .NET application. Maybe you've got Okta or SailPoint or Ping, right? All of these various point solutions. And then now you can start to tie them all together with all of the tools to help connect them into Sentinel. And whether it be something like a native connection via a built-in API, or something like a CEF or Common Event Framework standard, maybe it's syslog, or maybe I use a threat intelligence service via Taxi, right? I could pull in that threat intelligence data to look for threat indicators. So all of these different points now that Microsoft Sentinel can provide to bring all of these capabilities into a single pane of glass across on-prem, your data center, your mobile endpoint device, right? IoT, and cloud providers. All right. So Sentinel really provides this rich platform for you to visualize the log data. I don't know about you guys. I don't like staring at thousands and thousands of event log codes. Right, it hurts the eyes. But the common phrase is a picture can paint 1,000 words. So this ability then now that Sentinel provides this way to visualize all of that log data, right, through either workbooks, right, harnessing that KQL or Kusto query language, right, to filter through all that data to identify those potential security threats, or anything that are proactive analytic alerts based on those data queries that you've built for your own custom needs, or Microsoft's machine learning based alerts. So once an alert has been triggered, right, Sentinel enables that SOC analyst to perform that investigation task via this lovely picture that you see here in front of you, via the visual investigation. And you're able to look at this graph across time, right? All of the various analysis of the different entities that this attack could have potentially touched. So you can see our example here. We have this failed login anomaly, and we can see that our initial entities are this user and this specific workstation that he supposedly could have potentially logged into. But you can see also that this user touched 3 other machines, and you can see what domains that he potentially accessed, right? And you can see that based on where he went, that one of them was a fake site, and it actually downloaded and executed a suspicious PowerShell script and compromised his account. Now, most conventional tools that we can think about, right, may not be able to detect those threats to the organization. Typically, and we have the example to show, right, these live in the environments for months, right? Our average response is about, what is it now, 190 to 240 days roughly, right? So combining data from all of those various tools and the products within the organization backed by that threat intelligence capabilities, right? We want to be able to allow our analysts really to go to work. So we use those fusion alerts, right, to identify behavioral anomalies along our MITRE ATT&CK framework. And then additionally, on top of that, we can enable various Microsoft security solutions along with Sentinel to provide a automated unified threat response by our SecOps teams through the extended detection and response, or XDR, capabilities that Microsoft Defender affords us. Now, once Microsoft Sentinel is enabled in your environment, right, we begin to baseline that environment, and this is very critical. We've seen this uptick in learning the overall behavior of our organization, and we use that to detect very suspicious activity based on those deviated tendencies. And this alerting capability, right, when configured, can really help save the SecOps team hours, right? They may otherwise spend manually analyzing various alerts from different products or different solutions to try and correlate that disparate data. Because each of those solutions don't know necessarily what a user's behavior might be on this particular workstation using this endpoint device and what they might be doing over in this application, right? It could be two different sets of behaviors. And so the ability to bring both of those together and create a more unified baseline has proven to be a huge value add. And for years, cybersecurity attacks have been reactionary in nature, right? With typically SecOps reacting to some alert that is raised. Most organizations have incredibly limited resources. And with the shifting focus of IT to be less reactionary and more proactive, is leaving those organizations looking for skilled resources to not only understand complex IT solutions, but also the necessary abilities to query and seek out attacks before alerts have even been raised. So this is that concept of threat hunting, right? And within Azure Sentinel, there's a lot of pre-built threat hunting capabilities. However, you also have the ability to build your own, and you can leverage the GitHub repository out in the Microsoft Sentinel community. Many people have contributed to threat hunt workbooks. So you can take those workbooks, either add them into your own Sentinel environment as is, or customize and tune them for your specific organization and build them even higher. Now, again, that's all built on Kusto. So if you don't have not interacted with Kusto before, or you're not uber familiar with it, it's definitely something that I encourage you guys to go and start learning. Now, this kind of gives you an example of what a modern SOC will start to look like. Over on the left, we have kind of the basic modern SOC, right? They're using that built-in model. They know how to understand an alert. Their analytics experience is relatively fresh, but they've made no investment in machine learning. So this is kind of what we would like to call our MVP, or our minimum viable product, from a modern SOC perspective. Now, as you move up the chain of maturity, you begin to make investments into understanding not only the detection, but the data. And this is where we're leveraging that built-in ML model, as well as some sort of custom enhancement. And then our next stage is we're taking that, understanding that detection and adding some additional basic ML. So imagine a built-in ML algorithm plus a custom trained algorithm. And then finally, our most mature level, or what we consider the most modern or most mature version of a modern SOC, is taking security analytics and coupling it with data science. All right, so you're building your own ML on top of the Microsoft template and combining them together. Now, all of you, hopefully you're familiar with Azure Logic Apps. Our capabilities to respond to meaningful alerts and attack patterns play well when we can automate those responses. And this is typically known through the process of SOAR, or security orchestration, automation, and response. And we have a lot of capabilities, or Logic Apps has a lot of capabilities to source alerts out of Microsoft Sentinel and be able to orchestrate the entire workflow of a response to a particular threat, whether it be posting a message in, say, a Teams channel, sending an email, creating a ticket in your ITSM, executing maybe some script or disabling a user, right? Whatever it may be. Logic Apps, I think, is truly the most flexible cloud workflow automation tool out there today, and being able to enable security operation teams to really respond in a multitude of different ways to various threats. Now, the other key capabilities, we have a number of built-in playbooks within Microsoft Sentinel. Now, these playbooks can be leveraged by SecOps teams to respond to additional threats. Now, these are also built on top of Azure Logic Apps. There are pre-built ones that we can take advantage of within our Microsoft Sentinel environment. We can create our own, as well as we have the Microsoft Security Community GitHub page to source available ones that other security analysts themselves have created for you. So one example would be to create an alert when a suspicious username is attempting to access an organization resource from a non-secure IP address. We can take that playbook, insert it into our alert, and tell it to respond to this specific alert by automatically blocking the username, challenging that username with MFA, or sending an email to require some sort of physical approval. There we go. All right, sorry. I always feel like I'm clicking ahead. So what does our modern SOC model look like? Our modern SOC model looks like how we have a advanced SIM working with specialized solutions. Obviously, I've thrown in the Microsoft-based solutions. However, we can leverage third-party tools as needed. So at the heart of our solution, we've got our SIM and SOAR as a service with Microsoft Sentinel. For malware-less attacks, we have our Microsoft Defender for Endpoint, for EDR, for Endpoint Detection and Response. With identity, we have our Azure AD Identity Protection, as well as our Microsoft Defender for Identity. And coming soon will be our Cloud Knox capabilities. For SaaS-based attacks, we have our Microsoft Defender for Office 365, as well as Microsoft Defender for Cloud Apps, and then Microsoft Defender for Cloud for our cloud-based assets, whether they live in Azure, AWS, or GCP. And then additionally, we can source all of our on-prem or data center capabilities through our third-party logs and tools, through either syslog or Ceph, into our Microsoft Sentinel. And again, all of this is based on our Azure Monitor capabilities, Azure Logic Apps, and our user and entity behavior analytics and machine learning technologies. So, conclusion, or what hopefully you guys will take away as you think about modernizing your SOC, whether it's for your own company or for customers that you're working with, right? It really is to understand that most traditional SIMs have really proven to be either too expensive to own and operate, or inefficient to scale at the current pace of business as we see it today. And so really, when we're looking for organizations to take that next step from a security SecOps perspective, right, we want to leverage a cloud-based SIM like Microsoft Sentinel to provide you that SIM and SOAR capability for your security operations center, to really provide that bird's eye view across your entire enterprise or your customer's enterprise, right? Putting the cloud capability at the center of your security operations to help eliminate any security infrastructure you might need, reduce any of your maintenance, and then provide you the ability to scale and meet your security needs with increasing visibility and control, right? So data ingestion at scale with the power of the cloud, increased efficiency, right? Driving reduced time to detection, more focused response to legitimate threats, and developing improved workflows. And then finally, turn your investment into machine learning models, right? Seeing your organization or your customers start to invest in creating their own machine learning models to drive adoption within multiple areas of their business. All right. So got plenty of time for some questions here.
Very much for that. Derek, it was absolutely brilliant. I know this is something that I'm going to be getting heavily involved in. I'm really looking forward to getting stuck in with it.
All right, Kevin, what's your question?
All right, it's an easy one. Oh, I concur with you. Right? Yeah. So I concur with you. Most organizations aren't scaled with security teams, right? They've normally got a security officer that they've had to bring in, right, to make sure it looks like they're doing the right thing.
To satisfy an audit requirement, right?
Exactly, ticking the box, right?
Yep.
And like you said, you got to bring in, they're not really mature in the whole cybersecurity world, and using something like Microsoft Sentinel, right? You can scale, right? And it's doing a lot of the work for you. So it's definitely something to have in your repertoire, right?
It absolutely is. And I think from just an overall organizational maturity perspective, right, we see a lot of organizations from a security perspective are starting to take notice, right? We're starting to kind of see this wave of cloud security, and a lot of organizations, I think pre-pandemic, pre-COVID, right, they were very content with just checking a couple of boxes. And now post-pandemic, or at least as we're coming out of this post-pandemic world, I think leaders within the business who are non-IT leaders have basically started asking their leaders, how are we addressing these issues? What do you need? What kind of budget do you require to resolve these issues? Because I don't want to be so-and-so in that article, or I don't want to be so-and-so that's being dragged into some government committee being asked what the heck happened. And so, and you're seeing governments respond too, right? GDPR has come into play. Canada has a new Privacy Act, and they're addressing more cybersecurity issues. The United States has responded, right? Our president has signed, I think, 1 or 2 executive orders in the last 6 months, specifically addressing cybersecurity issues. It's now kind of hit that point where the light bulb has gone off, and enough leaders, and both, in the public realm and in the private realm, that I think a concerted effort has started to be driven to address a lot of these issues. And we've even seen all of the major cloud providers, was it 30 billion each, into cloud security. So if you're not taking advantage of something like Microsoft Sentinel and the other capabilities around XDR and EDR in your environment today, I encourage you to go relook at your security architecture and your security strategy and really map it out. And are you truly taking advantage of the automated and AI ML capabilities that are available to you today? And if you're not, why? So, Carl, I think you were the other one who had your hand up, but I see you dropped your hand.
Yeah, I have my hand up, and then I was going to ask a question, then changed my mind, but I'll ask it again. So,
yeah. I love your shirt, by the way.
Cheers. Yeah, Emil Wang. Rest in peace. So I'm not so much in the security side of things these days, unfortunately. So I'm more dealing with ISVs. But when I was dealing with this sort of stuff, it was always a difficult conversation especially with salespeople, because there's the potential for a billing shock with Microsoft Sentinel and the way it ingests logs, because it's not just, you're not just paying for the log. Well, sorry, forgive me, my information might be about 18 months out of date, so you'll correct me if I'm wrong. But It didn't used to, you didn't it wasn't just the log analytics stuff or the workspace stuff that you were paying for. You were paying for the ML and the AI on top of that, and quite often, if an overzealous tech threw everything into Sentinel, all of a sudden you got a billing shock, and then people run away and people get put off, and then salespeople get put off from selling it in the first place. So how do you handle ingestion, and how do you handle maybe archiving of logs and things like that, so that billing shocks aren't a thing? Because this is important. Sentinel is very important, and if we need to try and stop CFOs and financial people getting those billing shocks that sends them running, so how are you handling that, or how would you recommend?
There's a couple of different strategies to handle, right? I think the first thing is most organizations who are in the cloud today are paying for some type of log storage. So the key here, and this, I'll tie this into Defender for Cloud. So one of the most common misconfigurations that I see from a lot of organizations who are leveraging Azure is they don't spin up a log analytics workspace before they spin up Defender for Cloud. They take the native Defender for Cloud.
Default.
And the problem is the default. The problem there is you can't put Sentinel on that LA workspace.
Yeah.
So the prevailing strategy is create your own, then enable Defender for Cloud on top of that, and then also put Sentinel in that same workspace. So you're not doubling up the log storage, right? So that's one place where I see a ton of sticker shock is, well, I've got Defender for Cloud, and then I spun up Sentinel. All of a sudden, my storage costs double. It's like, well, because you're doubling your logs in both spaces. So that's one area. Two, Sentinel, like a lot of now other Microsoft Azure products, has reserved capacity capabilities. So if you know you're going to be ingesting 100 gigs per day, or 200 gigs, or 500 gigs, I think it's gone up. Kevin, correct me if I'm wrong. It's gone all the way up to 10 terabytes now, I think, is what you can do reservations on. I haven't looked recently, but it used to be they'd only go up to 500, and now it's like ridiculous. So you can go up to 10 terabytes, right? So same principles apply as if I'm spinning up a VM. If I'm not using reserve capacity, I'm just shooting. I'm just handing gobs of money out for no reason. So the trick there is to look at your environment, know how much data you've got coming in from a security perspective, and take advantage of those reserved instances. And then finally, from a archival perspective, right? You talked about how do you handle those logs. Microsoft actually put out a recommendation specifically to address that concern, and it's with Data Explorer. So you can offload, and I typically recommend anything after 6 months, right? Because we know kind of after 6 months, security data really isn't valuable from a SecOps perspective. Now, you still may need it from a compliance or regulatory perspective, and that's totally fine. So leverage Data Explorer to pull that data out, stick it in an archival storage account. You're going to save yourself a lot of money, right? And so you'll make the CFO feel much better from a sticker shock perspective when you implement any really one of those strategies. Basic logging. Basic logging in what aspect? Oh, new feature. Yeah. Okay. Oh, you're talking about how to implement, how to optimize your Sentinel costs. Yeah. Another note on the cost. There's actually there is an MVP out there, and his name's not coming to me, but he actually built a really cool Sentinel cost optimizer tool. Basic logs archived here. And so you can actually go to his site, and he's got all of the different categories of logs that you would normally ingest into Sentinel. And you can put, hey, I've got 10 layer 2 switches. I've got 12 layer 3 routers. I've got, X amount of Office 365 accounts, right? And he has it all listed out. And I've used it a couple of times in customer situations, and I've gotten 95% within the close in terms of estimating costs. So he gets you, like that calculator he built gets you really close. And so you can be very upfront Yes, and the other thing I didn't talk about, right? So if you have M365, Azure AD, all that stuff, that's free. No third-party SIM is going to give you all your Office 365, Azure AD, all those logs, right? All that's going to cost you money. Microsoft's going to do it for you free. So take advantage of that. They also do special offers for certain things. So always make sure you're taking advantage of those when they come up. Those will save you money for various instances. They let you try out new features for free. I remember when Sentinel first came online, I could, for like 3 or 6 months, I could ingest, couldn't remember specifically, like I think all of my VM logs at no charge, right? So those are different things you just got to be, constantly checking, be mindful of, so that way you can take advantage of. And yes, Chris, I agree. I
was going to say, Derek,
excellent book. Go ahead.
It's also worth mentioning that obviously there's partner programs through like the Cloud Accelerator platform or program where you can get like a Sentinel workshop, which is funded by Microsoft, and MSSP partners provide that as well. That will allow you to do kind of that Sentinel proof of concept. And the link I've just put in regarding the E5 benefit, that was only meant to last for, I think, up until May this year. And it's now been extended fully now, and that's 5 meg per user per day for anybody with an E5, A5, or F5 or G5 license, which is 5 meg per day per user. It soon adds up.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
Yeah, and if you're on the smaller side of an organizational perspective, there's a lot of, like Charlie mentioned, MSSPs that you can take advantage of from a partner perspective, that this is what they're doing. They're managing multi-tenant Sentinel solutions at scale for a number of different clients. So maybe it isn't something from a cost perspective that you want to spin up on your own, but it is something you still want to take advantage of. It's helpful to look at some of those partners who are leveraging Microsoft security solutions, and you can still bring those into your environment via that partner.
Derek, Kevin, one for both of you. What's your view on Sentinel being in its own subscription?
I had this question today, and I've got a stance on it. So
I've got a stance.
Do you want to go first?
I got a stance, but I'll let you go first. You have the Microsoft answer,
right?
And I'll give you my answer.
Whoa! Right. So
someone record this quick and post it on Twitter.
You're an employee, Kevin. This is
you're an employee, Kevin. So
this is the official
I'm gonna
line.
record this, and then I'm gonna funnel it over to Ofer Shazaf and be like, "Hey, look what." No, I'm kidding.
It's going up on YouTube afterwards, right?
Right.
It's uploaded.
Nah, go ahead.
I can always cut this section out as well and
There
just
you go.
do it as a standalone.
Oh, it's cool.
Hey,
So
your thoughts are your own.
we're going to be talking about our enterprise scale, right? Reference architecture, right? And our topology. Then most of the deployments I've seen of this, and I've done previously, I have stuck it in its own subscription for a couple of reasons, right? One, you've got the chain of evidence, yeah? You don't want anybody tampering with those logs, right? And the only people that should really have access to it are the security teams. Two, it comes back to the cost of things, right? You can isolate the cost, right? And you can provide that back to your CFO, whoever it is, and go, this is how much Azure Sentinel is costing us, or this is how much our security platform tools are costing us. So you're forwarding all those requirements and logs, etc., to a dedicated subscription. Now, because that workload's going to be quite a major workload, it would fall into its own subscription anyway, once it gets to a certain weight, right? So, yeah, that's my opinion on it, right? I mean, please feel free to check out with the wider Microsoft community. But
So,
yeah,
Kevin, I fully back that opinion. Sentinel should get its own subscription, just from a governance perspective.
totally isolation, right? It's
Yeah.
you don't
So,
you wouldn't.
Well, okay, yeah. I mean, at enterprise scale, yes, right. I fully back that opinion as well. Where you're not going to see that is probably in smaller, organizations who are kind of above that threshold of I'm going to turn this over to an MSP but also who are not at scale where they're going to be deploying large amounts. It just out of a necessity, they're going to be probably placing it in, a subscription that has other. Now, what I would tell you is, if you're going to have Sentinel share a space with something, make sure it's your other management tooling, right? So if you're running, your monitoring, your Azure policy, things of that nature, that's the subscription you want to stick it in, right? I think in enterprise scale, it's the management subscription. So if I'm going to share it somewhere, that's where I would put it, at least on a medium to large, right, scale. But when I get to enterprise scale, yeah, absolutely. The amount of logs you're ingesting, probably at a large enterprise, global enterprise.
Global, yeah.
You're going to be sticking that in its own subscription, just on the sheer amount of data you're going to have to be storing. Like, there's just no way you want to be mixing that with anything from a billing, governance, subscription limit reason, right? Just isolate it and keep it away from everything else. Now, there's the other situation from a Sentinel perspective that I didn't touch on that I know does come up at times, and that's the not the multi-tenant, but the multiple Sentinel. Because do remember, in order to meet some governance and compliance, sometimes Sentinel has to live in the regions, right? So GDPR is a good example. So there it's very behooving to be familiar with how to deploy Sentinel and kind of what they define as a multi-instant architecture, where you've got maybe local SOC teams in different geos who will look at that relevant data, and then you'll have like a kind of global Sentinel sitting on top that kind of can peer into each of the smaller instances. And there's even a multi-tenant model, but that's typically where MSSPs play in, where you can integrate it with Azure Lighthouse and do it that way. But if you're a large global enterprise, right, and I've got subsidiaries, a good example would be somebody like, say, Sony, right? Corporate Sony would have a Sentinel, and then like interactive entertainment, Sony Pictures, Sony Television, right? Each of those subdivisions would probably have their own instance, just because of the nature of their business and different things that they have to worry about. So that's another architecture reference where you might also do separate subscriptions, not only from a governance perspective, but from a geolocation compliance perspective. So yeah.
Can't argue with that, Derek.
Yeah.
Sounds pretty logical.
Yep.
What do you, based on the separation thing, and a general question to everyone, what do you think of the idea that because it's a Microsoft product, you should have it backed off by something like a QRadar as well, because you're coming out of the Microsoft ecosystem? And I heard this at a education conference recently, and
there's a number of supported architectures where you can take Sentinel and use that to curate and fine-tune the data that you're getting from a cloud provider perspective, and then funnel it down into like a QRadar or a Splunk or an ArcSight. So that if you go to the reference architecture, Microsoft Security Reference Architectures, I had a picture of one of those, or I have a picture. Let me go back to it, and then we'll. Oh geez. Nope, the other way. Go the other way. Where is it? Right, so you can see right here, you have that classic SIEM or alert integration via the Graph Security API. So I can still pump that data down to a QRadar or a Splunk or an ArcSight. But what I want to make sure what I'm sending down is the already curated and funneled data. So I'm not just dumping data into my on-prem solution, but I'm only dumping the most relevant data from a security perspective. So that way I'm helping minimize my cost perspective, because running that and Sentinel is going to be a very costly solution. I get it where you're coming from a
I'm
high
coming
availability. Yeah.
Not so much from a high availability, but more from a kind of a compliance type perspective, because it, we talked about taking Sentinel out and putting it into its own subscription, but then going further than that and taking it away from the Microsoft ecosystem. That's
Okay.
kind of where
you feel like from a compliance perspective, it's got to be like in the four walls of your business.
Not even in the four walls, but also almost in an independent vendor product from the Microsoft ecosystem.
Okay, yeah,
that's kind of
Okay, yeah, you would leverage the Graph Security API, and yeah, you can funnel that down. So it's still a part of that SOC modern reference architecture that they provide. But yeah, I would make sure that all that stuff is curated and done, because as we know in the cloud, right, ingesting data is fine. You can send as much data as you want up to the cloud. Taking data out of the cloud is where they hit you hard. So you just want to make sure that if you're going to be paying that cost, that it's relevant.
Because QRadar is a flipping expensive product as well.
Well, the funny thing is I was watching a presentation on IBM security with Microsoft, and essentially IBM has already admitted that QRadar is not a supported platform anymore. So if you actually go and subscribe to IBM security as a service, right, as an MSSP, they are now leveraging Sentinel. They are no longer leveraging their own product. So
wow, that's pretty. Yeah, that's pretty major, right? Yeah.
So I mean the dwindling down to Splunk, ArcSight. There's a newer platform out there called Laceworks. They don't necessarily bill themselves quite as a SIM, but they have a lot of SIM-like capabilities. But they also leverage the same born in the cloud, behavior analytic, machine learning, AI capability. So that would be another third party that I would say that would run in the same vein as a Sentinel in that perspective. I was gonna say, Chris, if you're talking, I can't hear you.
Does it help if I unmute my mic?
It's okay.
Just massive thank you, Derek, for your time. The fantastic presentation. I'm just wondering if anyone's got any last minute questions.
Actually, one of my interests is so I deployed Sentinel at my previous place, and we've got it at my current place. But one of the big flaws is not in Sentinel itself, but it's where do you find the staff and the money to pay the staff that can actually utilize that level of tooling and capability.
I think that's the $1 million question.
It is the $1 million question, and so ultimately, that's where Sentinel is both. Well, right, it's creating a problem, but in the same vein, Sentinel can solve that same problem. In that, if you can find those one or two people that are good at building your machine learning models, your playbooks, your SOAR capabilities, the level of people you need to interact with Sentinel on a more frequent basis suddenly starts declining. So you're kind of at this crossroads where you need the skilled people to configure that automated capability to where you kind of don't need them, so to speak. So yeah, that's you're at that kind of middle ground, tough road of needing the right Sentinel people to operate it to get you to where you don't need them to operate it.
Yeah, sort of. Yeah, but there's a team of cybersec people there, 4 or 5, and I said, so when I just because I was doing more the Azure side of things, and I went digging around and discovered that Sentinel had been deployed and it was there, and started poking at it and looking through it, and discovered all these risky users and all the other bits and bobs that you can find in there. And I'm thinking, right, so I've got this stuff, it's alerting on stuff, but nobody's actually doing anything with it. And then I got told the response from the security guys was, well, it's sort of down the road. We're under-resourced at the minute. And I'm like,
would you almost be inclined to bring contractors in to configure Sentinel and in such a way that then your cybersec guys can just take over the day-to-day?
I think it's a classic case of we're not paying enough money, and we haven't got the skilled people, and it's going to be a really difficult circle to square, frankly, because the sort of money, even if you can get somebody in, where's the money for that, and then what happens when they disappear out the door?
So, Alan, I completely get where you're coming from. Company I work for is trying to recruit consultants to deploy Sentinel and Azure, and I'll be perfectly blunt, in the last probably two months, the salaries of skilled cyber people in cybersecurity have gone up by at least 10, if not 20%, and more. There's a massive shortage. Microsoft have realised that globally there is a shortage of people to those skills. I guess one of the big arguments would be that's where your MSSPs come in, to kind of help fill that gap and take some of that away, and sharing that risk really with you.
MSSPs, or honestly, it's going to be a lot of personal development within your organization. Kind of, having a frank conversation with your higher ups, being like, "Look, we've got this tool. We need to be responding to these type of threats." So, needing to make, because there's plenty of free training out there around Sentinel to get you at least skilled up to run the day-to-day and configure, I would say, probably a good 50 to 60% of what Sentinel is capable of. There's the Sentinel Ninja trainings. There's the SC200 learning paths on Microsoft.learn. So there's the training out there available to you to at least get, relatively up to speed. So it's just about setting aside that time to get there for yourself, right? From an organizational perspective.
I figured out myself. I worked out, got Sentinel deployed and consuming most of the key services in 48 hours. It was up and running, dashboards, and it was alerting of password spray attacks, that kind of thing. So the deploying piece isn't that difficult.
It's the data, it's the operational and automated capability. Yeah. So,
but I got a question for you. A serious question.
Yeah.
Is everybody saying, "Oh, it's Sentinel," when the bottom line is that they have not hired the people that actually understand what cyber attacks look like and how to respond to cyber attacks, and they're just using Sentinel as the excuse?
That's a really good point.
Yeah, no, I mean, that is, some of it is, some of it is you've got to get people who understand cloud security, the cloud in general, and then the specific platform or tool set that you're going to use to help augment your knowledge and your capabilities on how to respond to those threats, right? So yes.
Are we seeing the same issues with M365 Defender and Defender for Endpoint?
More or less, yes. You're seeing similar issues around that. I would say you're seeing it more so, I think, from a Sentinel perspective, because if I've got M365 Defender and that suite of products, I'm more than likely already probably leveraging Sentinel and just sending that data in there. So I'm just kind of abstracting up another layer instead of kind of being in that XDR world, right? I'm operating more at the organizational view versus kind of the workload management level. But yeah, more or less, I do see a lot of organizations. Sorry, I would say modern workplace is what I meant. But yeah, a lot of organizations, modern workplace security, they have the requisite licensing and all that stuff, but it's not even configured and they don't know how. And so that's, in my company, we have a specific practice dedicated just to that, because that's the shortage that's available, and those guys are busy all the time.
Yeah, I would say at the moment, I would say 60% of my work, and it's global now, right, is doing cybersecurity, workshops or assessments with my customers. The demand's unbelievable. Well, I'm getting calls for like Saudi Arabia and everything, right? We need to go out there, right, and show them what they've bought and how to use it and all this kind of stuff, right? It's absolutely crazy out there at the moment.
No, I'm seeing the same. I'm literally stacked day in, day out with
Just
different
rammed.
things.
Yeah.
And just Defender Suite, the Sentinel Suite, and we've got a good footbed in the US with some really good engineers. We've had people that have agreed to join us and then suddenly drop out because they've been gazumped.
Yeah.
And how can you can't compete in the market? It's ridiculous at the moment. There is that shortage. So it's a great time to get involved in cybersecurity and get your training in, get your ninja training in place and get hands-on experience. You can probably, in some cases, you can even double your salary.
Oh, easily.
Yeah, I completely agree there. But I do take the point on about like MSPs, etc. Of filling some of these gaps. I don't know what I take your point as well, Alan. I think the problem is with certain places where you may work, they may not want to invest in the staff. I've had that experience in the past, where it's been a case of just get this done. We don't care about that. We just want this stuff done. And rather than looking and advancing and using the latest technology and, upskilling the staff to be able to deal with that and moving forwards in a progressive way, how you should be. And most of the time, you end up finding that people just want to firefight. And it's a shame, really. Right, guys. Derek, thanks again. Kevin, also massive thank you for your presentation. So yeah, it's been fantastic having you guys on tonight, and I hope people took away from it what I took away from it. I will just take the screen back now. Okay, can everyone see that?
Yeah, mate.
Fantastic, thank you. Okay, so obviously we're a new user group, and what we're after is some feedback on how you thought tonight went. There is a QR code there and also a short link. Really would appreciate if you could take your time just to fill the feedback form in for us, so we can try and improve and give you more of what you want. As you say, as I mentioned earlier, we want this to be a community. And that's how we want to grow it, and everyone is a part of that community. Okay, so quiz time. Our sponsors, HTG, have got a Amazon gift card and some HTG swag for the prize tonight. If you are outside of the UK, it will be a digital voucher. But if you are inside the UK, we will get it posted out to you. Okay, so you can see that screen there.
If you share it, mate, we can't see it.
I thought it was just me not being able to see it.
No. I was waiting for him to finish speaking.
Yep, there we go.
So if you go to menti.com, and you can enter the code 68884392, or you can use the QR code there to take it over. I just hope this works, because last month it didn't work and I had to get Dean Allaby to step in and run it. But I've managed to move on a slide, so it's good. Thanks myself.
Demo gods didn't get their sacrifice this evening.
Oh, hello.
Okay, we've got an here now. 3, 4, 13, 14, 15. Okay, 15 joins. Any more? There's one more. What numbers are we looking at, Charlie? We need enough for everyone. Okay, guys, I'm going to make a start now. Okay, the quicker you answer the questions, the more points you get. What is an NVA? A non-virtual application, a network virtual alerting, network virtual appliance, nautical vulnerability alert. And it's network virtual appliance.
I like the sound of nautical though. It's got like a Kubernetes thing going on there, right?
Definitely, yeah. I didn't actually think of that. That was Charlie's question. So what is the query language used in Sentinel? SQL, GraphQL, KQL, OQL. Spot on. Know the languages. Okay, question 3. What would you use to trigger an automated action with Sentinel? A workbook, a playbook, or a notebook?
The wrong one.
That was me with the first question. I was the network virtual alerts or something like that.
No, I got it right. I got it right. That's okay.
Fantastic.
Actually, the answer would probably be an analytical rule because a playbook is what's triggered. Now, what would you use to trigger?
Well done, guys. People were listening because Derek did mention that.
Yep.
It's hanging off every.
You would use the playbook that's integrated into your alert that gets triggered.
Which security-related exam is being released to beta in April? The SC500.
Can't wait to take this one.
The
I'm looking forward to that one myself,
AZ550,
actually.
the SC100, or the MS800.
That MS800 is going to be great.
It is.
What's it going to be?
Couldn't tell.
SC100.
Yep.
Spot on.
Wednesday in beta for the non-MCTs. It's the next week, the week after.
Yep. Free for the MCTs.
Yeah, I got an email about it.
Which method is the preferred method to configure Defender for endpoint on Windows 10 or 11? Group Policy Object, Microsoft Endpoint Configuration Manager, Registry Entries, or Microsoft Endpoint Manager? Spot on.
Oh, come on, guys. You know you need to do it on Reg Entries.
What are you talking about?
Reg
GPOs all the way.
It's what you do in AVD, right? GPOs.
Totally.
Okay, let's see where the leaderboards is up to. And we've got Antonio in the lead at the moment. Got Derek in second and Banny in third. I think, Banny, you were last month's winner. So you need to up your game a little bit, mate. Okay, question 6. Name one feature of Azure Firewall Premium that is not in the standard version. DNS proxy, service tags, inbound DNAT support, or TLS inspection. Or split, it's TLS inspection. It's only available in the premium version.
I was gonna say DNAT supports and all.
Question 7. What is the missing common factor of MFA according to Microsoft? Something you know, something you have, and something you want, something you can remember, something you are, something you did in the past.
Something you did in the past.
Dear Lord.
I know what you did last summer.
It is so.
Absolutely spot on. These answers.
If it was something you did in the past, you'd lock yourself out.
I know, right? You want to forget that stuff.
I was going to say something you can remember, but
what is the
like
exam code for this certification? So is it the AZ600, AZ500, SC500, or the MS500? Move on to the next one. Okay, question 9. What is the name of the UK Office of Cyber Security? National Cyber Security Centre, National Office of Cyber Security, UK Cyber Security Task Force, or National Security Centre of UK?
Fat fingered that one. Yep.
And it's the National Cyber Security Centre. That was mentioned
There's
earlier.
me looking for GCHQ in the middle of all that.
GCHQ.
Number 10 Downing Street.
Yeah.
Oh, God help us all if that was the case.
And the last question. What does FIDO stand for?
Oh, this is a good one.
Oh, that's a good one.
Forget Identity Once, Foundation Identity Online, Fast Identity Online, or Fast Identity Once?
That was a pure guess.
Yeah, I've just blagged that, basically.
Ooh, evenly split.
Ooh.
Oh, I got...
Okay, guys. See who the winner is.
I won't be the winner. I fat fingered that one question.
And it's Stephen C. So Stephen, if you can reach out to me, please, at chris@mscsug.org. If you can reach out to me on there, or even just drop me a message in this chat, and we will arrange to get the prizes sent to you as soon as possible. Okay, well done, everyone. Looks like Fanny, there you lost your title of winner, and Carl, is that you, Cook?
Yes, sir.
That's a good recovery, Carl.
Really?
I was last, wasn't I?
I got the last one wrong.
I let Carl get those extra couple of points because he was
feeling sorry for me, dude. Thanks.
No.
Okay, and then if you just give me 1 second, back over to PowerPoint. James is going nice and slow. And there we go. Okay, as I mentioned earlier on, guys, Azure Live is happening next month, as it still is, unless you're in Australia, and then coincidentally it's this month. So it's the 21st of April at 12 midday till 9 GMT. If you use the link on the left-hand side, you'll be entered into a prize draw to win a VIP goodie bag. And if you just want a bit more information about the event, it's an online-only event. Some amazing speakers on there. You can find more information on the right-hand link, or use that QR code. And we will post this on our social medias as well. So if you subscribe to our Twitter at MSCSUG or on LinkedIn, you can find us on LinkedIn as the Microsoft Cloud Security User. Okay. Also got our YouTube channel that this presentation will be on tonight. That'll be uploaded within the next couple of days, and there's the link to that. Just want to say a massive thank you for our speakers tonight. Also a massive thank you to HCG, our sponsors, who have sponsored the prizes. Also, don't forget that we've got the social media prize draw that's still running, and that's going to be running until 1 p.m. tomorrow afternoon, GMT, and the winner will be announced tomorrow evening around 7 p.m. Charlie, have you got any last words?
No, just once again, thanks to Kevin and Derek for coming and speaking at this month's event. Both talks were superb. Really enjoyed them both. So thanks, guys. And thanks everyone for attending. Without the community, we couldn't we wouldn't be here. So yeah, it's great to have you all here, and hopefully we'll see you on the 28th.
Fantastic, guys. Thanks very much for joining.